rest of the crowd will join pretty soon, and we're excited to have Sujata come here and talk, and she's donating her time, and that's awfully nice of her. There's one special person, Dr. Pathak. Dr. Pathak is a professor at USF, and I'm really excited that he's here to listen to us. More than that, I think he has done a tremendous amount of work in the social sphere. I'm going to hand the mic over to Lekha for introduction of the keynote speaker. Thank you all. I am good.
Thank you, Dr. Venkat. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Venkat. I'm not sure where you picked up, but good morning, everyone. Today's speaker is Sujata Ameya. Sujata Ameya is a psychotherapist and a relationship coach. She has a master's in counseling psychology from Osmania University, and she holds an M.Phil in clinical psychology from NIMHANS, Bangalore, a very prestigious organization. She has maintained a private practice in Hyderabad, India for 29 years. Through her coaching, she enables partners in a threshold marriage to either connect consciously or to disengage gracefully and transform powerfully. That was a mouthful. But her workshops aim to enrich relationships and turn conflicts into opportunities of self-discovery and mutual growth. In addition to all her academic achievements, she's also an awesome mom of 2 teenage girls. Welcome, Sujata ji, and please take it away.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you, Lekha ji, for that warm introduction. I hope I'm audible and visible. These happen to be the 2 most frequently commonly asked questions everywhere now that we are doing webinars all the time. A warm welcome to all the participants, and thank you, HFSS, for this opportunity to share whatever I have learned over the years. In a pre-corona, when we had talks and seminars, etc., or workshops, I would always begin with a meditation where we were all seated together and I could guide people through some exercise or activity. But today I'm going to begin with a poem that I believe represents this whole context and ambience of relationships, especially intimate relationships, what we yearn for in a relationship and how that failure or that difficulty actually then triggers the rest of the things that I'm going to be talking about. So in any case, even though it's not a meditation, I would request everyone to gently just close their eyes wherever they are seated and just listen to the poem. I'm going to just shortly share the screen. So this poem is called Swirling. It's taken from my own book, and it goes like this. When I can, my beloved, no longer contain the ecstasy surging forth from the center of my being, when I am bewildered as the ecstasy gives way all of a sudden unbidden to a gushing fountain of anguish uncertain, springing from a depth I often fail to fathom, when I can, my beloved, no longer stretch my arms to hold this swirling within my inner world, that I recall the comfort of your steady embrace and so yearn to behold your calm, sparkling eyes. So you can open your eyes and we will continue with the presentation. When I was training in NIMHANS, now one of the things that was drilled into us was when you are making a presentation, a seminar, a journal club, whatever it is, and you have a topic at hand, make sure that you either elicit or provide a working definition. So I'm going to stick to that tradition So here's our topic today has three words: relationship, conflict, and spirituality. It's interesting that when I sent the topic to Venkatji, there was a comma after relationship. But when the poster came back, there was no comma. That changes the context just a little bit. However, I'm going to still, give these three working definitions. So relation, and by the way, these are all just created for working purpose just by me in my work, in my therapeutic practice. This is not brought any other source. Relationship is a state of interconnection and interdependence between two or more objects or beings, the beings, sentient beings, all beings, humans, non-humans. Yeah. So there's a concept of interconnection and interdependence. Then conflict is a disruption in the rhythm of that interconnection and the disruption in the harmony of that interdependence in that relationship. And spirituality, it unfortunately it has become a word like God, like religion, like love. Everyone has something to say about it. No one is really clear about what it actually means. So even more so, the working definition of it. I believe spirituality has to do with an attitude more than a pursuit. So here's what I would say: spirituality is the willingness to be in an intimate and committed relationship with your divinity as your darkness. Yeah. What this means is the highest and the good and the nice parts of you, and also the so called lowest and not so nice parts of you. To be open, to be willing to look at them. Yeah, that's the thing. Now, whatever I'm going to be presenting to has emerged in the context of the work I do. It is unfortunate that the word relationship has become restricted to refer only to heterosexual relationships nowadays. That's really very constrictive. Relationship applies to, like I said, any two things in interdependence and interconnection. However, the domain of my work goes like this. So whatever I have learned, whatever I'm going to be presenting comes from this. So my work primarily involves relationship, and the should I take there is relationship itself can become a path to one's purpose. So we start, and I don't mean we start. I have worked with people in this stage one, stage two, then sometimes some marriages get into this situation, then this leads to the marriage situation. Then we come to transitions. Transitions are not necessarily one way pathways. You can be in a transition even when you are re-entering a marriage that has been very difficult after going through therapy, or when you're quitting a marriage as well. So that's transition. And this whole process of looking words and trying to understand what exactly has been going on often creates a sense of meaning and purpose for people to then pursue that. Yeah? So moving on, I'd like to talk just very, very briefly about the gradations of conflict. See, HFSS is exclusively working on the issue of domestic violence. If you look at this bell curve, on one extreme you have what is called amicable verbal disagreements. This is unfortunately a small minority, where the couples can have really strong difference in opinions, ideas, choices, decisions, but they're amicable, right? And on the other extreme, and thankfully this also is a small percentage, we have the whole thing of what is put under the basket of domestic violence, right? There's extreme hostility and aggression. Yeah, there is this middle portion, which is a huge portion, where there is conflict beneath what looks like peace. And this big chunk forms the area of my work. So I've not worked with people who are happy. They don't need to come to therapy. I don't work with these people because they need a very different kind of intervention, which therapy is not in a position to provide. I work with this large middle ground. Yeah. Before we go into how conflict, relationship, and spirituality coexist, I'd like to present a model that I work with. within the context of which the rest of the ideas and concepts can then be understood. Yeah? So I call it the integrative transpersonal model of relationship. Kindly excuse the picture of that brain. It wouldn't leave the slide, so I left it there. We have the 5 elements, which are the source from which we emerge and also consider the source into which we go back once we quit this body. If you look at the correlations, the Earth is considered to be represented even in the microcosm within the human being. So the physical corresponds to Earth, the intellect corresponds to the fire element, water corresponds to the emotionality in human beings, and air transpersonal. By transpersonal, I'd like to explain uh, Western thinking, Western education has given this idea of even Western psychology of how the human being is considered to be something that is born, that acquires a bunch of traits and qualities, lives and dies, and that's the end of that story, just the visible spectrum. However, I think we have enough and more both scientific and spiritual information to say that we are not subject only to our own personal attributes and qualities. We are impacted by and influenced by several things which are transpersonal, which is collective, social ideas, the collective unconscious in the whole universe, the generational impact, genetic impact, the impact of evolution over millions of years, all of those things impact us. That would be put under the category of transpersonal. And the spiritual is the mediator all these spaces through all these aspects. And these are interconnected in a cyclical and in a infinity kind of way, where one impacts the other, one is influenced by the other. According to neuroscience research and modern physics research, if we look at the bottom two, the earth and the water, they are referred to as the feminine, carrying the feminine archetype, and the intellect and the transpersonal are considered to be the masculine. The Eastern and ancient approaches to health or wellness or spirituality, all of these tend to be more grounded in the feminine, whereas the modern and the Western tend to be grounded more in the upper half, which is the masculine archetype. Now, by that, what I mean is there is a specific focus on what is visible and what is measurable, quantifiable, and replicable in the name of science. It's almost like what is not visible has no validity, right? So this is the model that underlies all the work and all the approaches that I work with in therapy. So whatever the system, whether it's in internal or interpersonal or family, community, organization, no matter what, the natural laws of this cyclicity of seasons and birth, growth, death, decay, and death, all of these cyclical processes, as well as polar processes, meaning good and bad, day and night, up and down, those kinds of apparent opposites. These are intrinsic to every human realm. Now, the latest research has actually found lots of evidence to actually confirm these things, even biologically. These processes are mediated. The top section is mediated by the left brain. The lower section is mediated by the right brain. Now, let's understand a little bit the dynamics of conflict in intimate relationship using the same model. So we have physicality, which has to do with everything that comes under the realm of physical interaction between the couple. This is not restricted to sexual intimacy. This is overall sharing the space, being comfortable with each other's presence, each other's body, each other's proximity, all of those things. Then we have finances. Then we have worldview. how I see the world and how the other person sees the world. And couplehood. By this, what I mean is their identity in their social ecosystem as a couple, or is it only as two individuals? If there is a match here, then one thing keeps reinforcing the other. A mismatch in any of these areas, physicality or worldview or finances or couplehood, one thing starts shaking the other aspect, and the overall strength of the relationship comes down. The problem in couplehood and worldview tends to create passive conflict where it's not very visible. There's a general disgruntlement, there's a general unhappiness. It's not very visible. They seem like reasonably well adjusted couples. Whereas this axis, physicality and finances, usually the conflict tends to be very active. There is arguments and fights and going away and those kinds of things. Then let's understand what is the origin of this mismatch here that we spoke about. The psychological impact of disruptive childhood experiences. What happens is in childhood, now when I say difficulty or disruptive experiences, we're not necessarily talking about big calamities or major trauma. We're talking about everyday upbringing issues, small things like shaming a child for not looking good, not dressing well, color of their skin, height, scholastic achievements, sports failure. It could be anything, anything at all. Those kinds of unhealthy or unhappy kind of childhood experiences can result in two categories of basic emotions. One is the shame and grief, which then results in these feelings. The child tends to feel inferior, less than others, damaged, as though something is not whole, broken, undeserving. They feel, I'm not good enough to get this, and unimportant. That I don't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not very important in this world. Then there is the other complex of emotions. Oh, sorry. These feelings tend to be usually found more so in the female gender than in the male gender. The second complex of feelings is contempt and rage. Now, this creates feelings of superiority, entitlement, indispensability, and flawlessness. This is the other extreme of the pole. Remember, we were speaking about polarities. So these people tend to come across as self-righteous, over-important, my way or the highway, and always expecting things to happen. This is usually found more often in men. Now, this is not to say that the genders don't show this across the board, but it's broadly, divided that way. Then, now these things, these are the way the person feels inside, and also the way it is projected outside. Let's also understand what are the hidden psychological inner complexes which generate those feelings and those behaviors, right? So if you look at this model, the elemental model, we have the feminine, the masculine, the inner child, and the inner parent, and the adult identity represented along those five elements, right? Now, what happens is instead of being healthy, the feminine aspect in the person, and this is independent of gender, let's not mix up gender here. The feminine qualities, the feminine attributes are disowned or denied. The masculine attributes are in excess and therefore they become toxic. The inner child is wounded or abandoned, and the parent tends to be either neglecting or critical. Now, please understand these are internal processes, meaning each of us has an inner parent, has an inner child, has the feminine aspect to us and the masculine aspect to us. Now, thanks to different experiences as we grow up during our upbringing, these kinds of complexes can get created and they then play havoc. So, what they create is a reactive or addicted kind of an adult. By this, what I mean is either the person tends to act out all these tendencies onto the world, or they then turn inwards onto themselves, which is then seen in as addictions. Yeah. Now, how these hidden complexes manifest in attitude and behavior when you so this is how those four major emotions show up. There is withdrawal, or there is aggression, there is indifference, or there is hostility. And the inner self talk that these people indulge in is leave me alone, how dare you do this, I don't care, and how could you? There's a lot of judgmentality there. This again broadly gets classified like this. The lower section, women tend to show it more often. The upper section is more frequently found amongst men. Now, how do we heal complexes? Yeah. So one is this may sound very what do I say, preachy, but this is the work I do, and this is a path, this is a process, this is not a one-time tip that you can take away and do something. But I wanted to give an overview. So the way to heal these complexes is to work with your inner parent, and also work with acknowledging the things that your parents have done to you, the good and the bad, both, and reach a state of forgiveness and genuine gratitude for whatever they've done. Because parents, I think, are the only species who will not do anything that they know is going to harm the child later. Whatever they do is done in good intent. Yeah. Then we heal and take charge of the inner child. We really make friends with it so that it works with us and not against us, so that it doesn't throw tantrums but unleashes its own creative and spontaneous energy for us. Then we embrace and integrate the disowned feminine. This has to do with all the softer, sensuous, um, uh, everything that is associated with the feminine quality, the rest, relaxation, openness, slowness, relishing things. There is a word rasa in Sanskrit, to really enjoy life in a slow kind of a way. And you embrace and balance your masculinity, where you're not driven by this constant, rush and accomplishment and competition and hoarding and amassing. You don't do any of that in imbalance, and thereby hope to become a conscious, autonomous adult. Now, these two, if you notice, have to do with the masculine, feminine, and the parent and child. So these create for us two very, very important axes. One is called the axis of individuation. And okay, we're talking about integration first, which is the masculine and feminine, where both these aspects come together in you in a way that you're a balanced, whole, and complete human being, rather than being a one-sided or an imbalanced, highly masculine person or a highly feminine person, right? And this is the axis of individuation, where by taking charge of your inner child and working with your inner parent, you come into your own as a human being, as an adult. You're not an extension of the family or the culture that you were brought up by. You truly can say, I am my own person. Yeah? So these are the two main processes. Now, if someone actually goes through this whole process, here's how it looks, what wholeness looks like. We have the integrated feminine, the healthy masculine, the creative child, and the conscious adult, with a wholesome human being in the, that has all these aspects. And the person has a sense of feeling sufficient within themselves. They feel complete, not broken or damaged. They feel deserving, not undeserving, and they feel valuable. They don't doubt the importance or significance of their existence on this. Yeah. And of course, they will experience positive self regard. And because they experience positive self regard, they also regard others positively. The statements that can enable this, even though they may sound like just simplistic, just words, right? But it is a self talk that we indulge in a lot. So if you can actually understand this and use this, this process can actually turn around even just by these affirmations. So I am enough, I am worthy, I matter, and I am good. These four affirmations result as a result of the process of individuation and integration, but you can also begin here and generate and walk on that same process as well. So it's a two-way street here. Yeah. Now, I spoke about the cyclicity and polarity in the model that I shared earlier. I'd like to show how the rhythm actually operates in every relationship, no matter what this relationship is. So we begin with a sense of connection. You know, it could be friendship, it could be a comfort, it could be some kind of a warmth, it could be falling in love. It doesn't matter what grade of that connection is. Then we inevitably, no matter what, how long or how soon, conflict will emerge in the relationship. That's just the nature of that cycle. Yeah. The problem is, first of all, we don't know how to navigate conflict because there is no course that teaches you to do that. And the second is, we forget that there are two more stages after this. Not forget, we don't know, right? Conflict actually is an invitation to go inwards to see what is it within you that's in conflict, which is being reflected or mirrored in this relationship. So the third stage actually is the stage of chrysalis, which is the cocoon before the butterfly emerges out. Yeah. And once you do that, once you retreat into your inner space and understand what actually is going on internally for you, often it results in a greater sense of communion when you come and reconnect with the person, right? And this, like all processes, is cyclical. So you feel deeply connected, then you fight about something, then you withdraw. But the withdrawal can be either a hostile withdrawal away from the person or a potent retreat into yourself. So I think it depends on what is behind the withdrawal, which then leads you to a deeper communion when you come back. There is better communication as well. Now, an individuated and integrated person can follow these cycles in a much more productive way than someone who is not, because they are not acting as an individual; they're acting like a group of people sitting inside their head. There's just a lot of complication to the conflict and the fights also if those processes are not completed. This axis of communion and connection is an axis of rest and refreshment and repose in a relationship. And the chrysalis conflict axis is actually the axis of growth. A relationship which does not have conflict and the opportunity for the chrysalis stage actually may not grow much. It may grow stale, it may not grow forward. Now, let's look at the other aspect, polarity. We just saw cyclicity, now polarity. The polarity of attachment and autonomy in relationships. Attachment, we all know. Yeah. Autonomy, we all struggle for, especially in close relationships. So if we plot them on two different axes, this is how it looks. Relationships with low levels of attachment and autonomy tend to be in collusion with each other. That word itself conveys that that the project belongs to nobody, but everybody is involved in that project, and therefore there is a lot of confusion and conflict in the relationship. Too much autonomy and too little attachment can lead to a sense of detachment in one or both partners. Very high attachment and poor boundary, poor autonomy tends to create enmeshments where the partners actually don't know what they themselves are feeling. They bounce off of each other, their own emotionality, expectations, desires, everything. Yeah? And the last quadrant, where the partners are high on attachment and high on autonomy, is the only quadrant where genuine connection is actually possible, genuine and healthy connection. Yeah? Now, the strength and stability in a relationship is the balance between the pull and push of this autonomy and attachment. You need a certain amount of attachment and a certain optimum amount of autonomy for a relationship to be strong and healthy. Otherwise, it will collapse. These postures are not possible if there is that amount of pull and push is not happening. Yeah. Here, I would like to talk about how do we create this? How do we create this kind of inner self sufficiency and a healthy interest and attachment with the other person? I call this the 5 pillars of intimacy and harmony model. The first pillar is exclusivity. It is very simply defined as being in 100% undivided attention to the moment in front of you. The moment includes the person or whatever it is that you're doing right in front of you. So for example, right now I'm speaking, you're listening, and we will have Q&A. All of us are 100% attentive to this moment. Right now, we are all in an exclusive relationship with each other right here. The next pillar is respect. This has to do with, even though the other person is different and from you, and you don't understand those differences, they deserve to respect it. Their existence is valid. It is like a very basic fundamental concept of respect, not just the idea of saying thank you and please. Yeah. Then we have care. This is about being in tune with the person in a way that you listen to and understand what they need and what they are asking you to provide, what their expectations might be, and to do it to the extent that is possible and to communicate whenever it is not possible. Yeah, that's about care. The fourth pillar is trust. This, in a way, is a no brainer, but this is the one place where we keep denting our relationships. This is not to do with extreme situations of cheating and betrayal and affairs. That's a whole other planet. We are talking about simple everyday interactions where there is congruence between what you mean and what you say and what you do. All these three are aligned. That is to do with trust. The fifth pillar is commitment. This is not necessarily in the way the word has become used now. Commitment is about saying, now that we both are together, no matter what shows up on our path, we will deal with it as partners on one side of the net, as a team, and not as adversaries on either sides of the net. Now, when you do this, when you do bring respect, care, trust, commitment in an exclusive atmosphere in the relationship, all of them will feed each other in a continuous loop. And of course, if you fail to do it, then all of them will deplete each other also in a continuous loop. And that is what actually creates intimacy and harmony in any relationship. Oh, yes, we were talking about strength and stability. So, here again, the greater the amount of respect and care in a relationship, the stronger it is. The strength is, built by that axis. And the greater the commitment and trust in a relationship, the greater the stability. That is the innings, the long innings, the long running of the relationship. Yeah. Now let's go to what happens. This is as far as relationship between two people is concerned. But there's a critical oversight we make, which is to do with the way we relate to ourselves. The thing is, the exact same things matter even when it comes to the relationship with ourselves. Can we be fully attentive to ourselves when we are doing something concerning us? Can we respect ourselves fully and not be judgmental and critical of ourselves? Can we give ourselves credit? Can we trust in our own intuition, our own thoughts, our own desires, our own wishes, our own vision, our own ideas? Can we take good care of ourselves? This is not about merely pampering with an occasion treat here, gift there. It is about dedicated, everyday, holistic care that includes body, mind, and spirit. And can you be committed whenever you're faced with a problem? Can you not give up on yourself? Can you really, um, uh, stand for yourself? Be a stand for yourself. Same like in the previous slide, these also, the more you do one, the more it feeds the other. And the less you do one, the more it depletes the other. And this is how we create that sense of sufficiency, self sufficiency. Here again, this success really strengthens your sense of agency, where you say, I am in charge of my life, I take 100% responsibility for my life. And this builds resilience, the ability to bounce back from problems. The self trust and the self commitment tends to create that resilience in us. Yeah? Then I'd like to, I think we are coming to the end of the presentation. I'd like to talk about how all these concepts then will reflect in an intimate relationship or a marriage. This is called the table model for marriage, where remember we spoke about this right at the beginning of the presentation about how conflict happens in relationships. So we have physical compatibility, we have financial security, we have values and worldview, the third leg, and then we have social identity. So when people ask me, so what kind of issues do clients usually come with? The thing is, it doesn't matter what kind of issues they come with. Broadly, they can be brought down to any one of these legs. The problem can be either in the physical realm or the financial realm, or the values and worldview and social identity. Social identity, especially I think now, has acquired a greater importance because the more visible the two people are as a couple, as a married or a together couple in their social ecosystem, the greater their anchoring and moorings within the marriage. Those who do not have that tend to be more likely to separate. Values and worldview also is another very, very critical aspect. In fact, many a conflict has to do with this, what you value and what the partner values. It can reflect in something as small as, shall we buy cloth diapers or shall we buy disposable diapers? It depends on what you value. You value comfort and convenience, you will want to do disposable. You value the green earth and not filling up the landfills, then you will do the cloth diaper. Now, something as deep as that can be very difficult to navigate unless they really learn to, work through it or talk through it. Yeah. So this also has the same impact. One feeds the other, and it tends to create that holistic feeling in a relationship. I think I'll skip this one, or maybe I should read it. It is important. It kind of summarizes the whole thing. The search for relationship is disguised search for the self. When you fully belong to yourself, you can securely belong in a relationship. Conflict in any relationship serves as a catalyst for self discovery. Heartbreak in an intimate relationship unlocks a profound opportunity for self actualization. And purpose does not reveal itself as a grand epiphany, it unfolds slowly, one choice at a time. This is more or less a summary of the very short presentation that I gave today. There's a lot of depth to each of those components and each of the axes that I spoke to. Each by itself can be a whole talk or a workshop. But I just tried to present everything here in this context. And I think I'd like to close with a poem, which is more an aspiration of where we would like our relationships to be, right? So this poem is called Together. Do not rush to name a destination, my beloved. Do not hasten your steps, nor hurry on this path. Walk close to me slowly. in silence so that love can keep pace with our strides. For you must know, my beloved, that love is the unceasing song of my spirit, that I can hear and sing only when my heart beats in rhythm with yours. For you must know, my beloved, that love is an unending dance of my soul, that I can see and partake only when I gaze long into your lucid lotus eyes. So that's the hope, that's the dream, that's the vision, that's the real yearning that most of us have for intimacy in a relationship. So I'd like to close the presentation here and leave it open for Q&A if we have any questions from the participants.
Um, can you all hear me? I don't have the mic on. Yes?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Before I hand it over to Malini to say a thank you, I just want to give a shout out to all the spouses, especially for those of us who've been working a lot, not just for this, but in a lot of domestic violence issues that they have given us the time to do what we like to do. Now I'd like to introduce Malini, and she's our vice president, and will give the thank you address. Thank you.
Hi, Sujata, and hi, everybody. Sujata, there are like two questions. One is, does autonomy means independence?
Is there more to the question?
No, that's all. It does autonomy
That's
mean independent?
mean independence. Yeah. So let me put it this way. As I started off the presentation with the definition of relationship, where two things or two beings, two people, are in interconnection and interdependence. So there is an aspect of independence, but it is futile to talk about independence without the idea of interdependence. Otherwise, there is no meaning to a relationship. Now, what does independence mean? It means you are capable and functional on your own, which is great, but that capability and functionality feels enhanced in the presence of a person. So, are you dependent or are you independent? So it's that subtle this thing. It means that you are perfectly capable of being happy and good with yourself by yourself and go on with life. But it is also the openness and the readiness to engage with someone else or allow an engagement to happen where you also experience an upliftment or an enhancement of your own wholeness, your own self. So I think dependence and interdependence, autonomy and attachment, these are two sides of the same coin actually. That they're polarities, but they exist on the same spectrum. So I hope that answers the question for the person.
Yeah. Thank you, Sujata. The next question we have is, self-realization is for one or both the conscience of family or even children contribute to this?
So let me quickly clarify something here. The phrase self-realization has been used more in the spiritual literature, spiritual context. I was using the word self-actualization, which is more a psychological term. And let me use this opportunity to clarify something here. In the way I have understood this whole process, self actualization is a step you come to, which then helps you walk to the destination of self realization. That's how I see it. Psychology without anchoring in spirituality is just a drab and dry pursuit. It won't take you anywhere. It's incomplete, and vice versa. Spirituality without deep psychological inner work is just a fantasy. It's just a flimsy pursuit. It doesn't mean anything. In fact, we have the phrase spiritual bypass to refer to this kind of a escapist kind of a spirituality. So self-actualization simply means, can you be fully present to yourself, all of you, in such a way that you're continually listening to what is it that your higher self, your soul is asking for, and to then proceed to see if that can be done. So this is a call to purpose. This is a call to fulfilled living. This is a call to finding meaning in your life. It is the journey of being in touch with the inner calling and using that to make choices and decisions along the path of life. And this can take you on various roads that you didn't even know existed, or which have been forbidden, or which have been told as unsafe. But perhaps that is your calling, and that would take you forward. Now, coming to your question, does everybody have to contribute to it? Do the children have to contribute? So, see, this is a very, very personal and unique journey. It's a self actualization. The word is self actualization. It's about you. It's about, can I actualize myself to my highest potential? Can I give myself a fighting chance to be and become whatever it is I'm meant to be and become? The best I'm meant to be, the optimum I'm meant to be. So the simplest and most potent way to enable self-actualization in others is to be on your path. So when you do that, energetically you bring something to the space that actually enables others also to follow that, to really live by those principles. So the answer is yes and no. You need to do your own actualizing efforts and hope that that has an impact and influence on the rest of the family as well. It's not something that can be demanded or commanded. That's the point.
Thank you. And the next question I have is, instead of detachment, I prefer the use of word indifference. Instead of exclusivity, I prefer mindful presence. What's your opinion on that?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think as long as you understand what the distinction is, the words are okay. I mean, whatever works for you, whatever appeals to you, whatever is more resonant for you is fine. That's okay. As long as, the distinctions are clear. Exclusivity, mindful presence, in the way I have defined exclusivity, is true. Absolutely. I would agree with that. I'm also referring to the idea of when you are engaged in this way with a particular person, married or not married, the commitment to really be with this one person. It is also about that. That is why I have used the word exclusivity. But in the way I have defined it for today's talk, what you're saying is also true. That also works.
Thank you. It's an interesting one. I have something on arranged marriages, and I think so. It's in arranged marriages, seed of love is planted and it grows slowly and slowly with mutual love, respect, care, and open communication. Is it correct to say women have to work deeper than men to build all the pillars of loving, happy married life? Do you want me to repeat it? I know it was a long question.
No. There are two big questions in that question. So I'm wondering which one to take first and how to answer. So there are two parts to the question. One is an assumption that a love marriage sows the seed and then it is nurtured and it blooms in a certain way. Would be great, but it's not always the case. And the second part is it always the woman's responsibility? Um, I don't believe that. I think it is because of that injunction that we have trouble. It is both partners' responsibility to do that. Both need to do that, right? I give this very flippant example. Gandhi could do this nonviolent approach to, you know, getting us the freedom as the popular opinion goes, um, because he had an opponent who matched that. I do believe that if it were the Mughals at the time, they would have put him in jail or chopped him up or hung him or something. So it takes two to tango. Please understand that, especially in a very intimate and close relationship like marriage. So one person cannot pull the cart. It is not possible. Both need to do it. What is possible is there will be phases and stages where one will do more of it than the other. That is allowed. That is allowed. In fact, there's another thing that most therapists refer to. In a good marriage, one partner goes crazy while the other one holds watch. That's just the way it works. So the contribution, the timing, the extent, the proportion of all these things can be varying. That's okay, but both have to contribute to make the relationship work. It's absolutely not negotiable.
Thank you. There is a piggyback question on autonomy and independent, and you said that they are the same side of the coin. So how do you draw the line between them?
Huh. So that's what I was explaining even in those models. And also in the summary, when I said you can only belong securely in a relationship when you're fully belonging to yourself first, right? So there is this concept of personal boundary and space. It has come from the West, but I think it is a very deeply ingrained concept in all wisdom literatures, all ancient traditions, right? It is about being in integrity with yourself. That is what it is, right? So fully, truly knowing yourself and being true to what you know of yourself in a way that is honorable and respectful to the other as well. It is not either me or you. It's this is who I am in your presence. That's an approach. So that strong and deep sense of integrity is what affords you the thing of independence. When you say I am me, I am not attached to somebody. I'm not like a Siamese twin with somebody. I'm a separate entity. To be able to say that, we are talking of a very, very deep integrity at all levels: body, mind, soul, spirit. So that process of developing integrity is what is conveyed in those two axes of individuation and integration. So we are in a split as far as the feminine and masculine aspects go. For example, the question that just was asked about the arranged marriage and the woman's responsibility, that question exists because of the way we are brought up, and this is not to do with India or the West. This is global. This is all over the place. There is such a strong patriarchal impact on the way girls and boys are brought up that there is a split. Men tend to more in a certain way, women tend to be more in a certain way. So these incomplete human beings try to find each other to feel complete. And to that extent, that is not an independent coming together of people, it's an enmeshment, it's an entanglement, right? So independence, first of all, needs to be worked on, and it has to do with this idea of fully being in integrity with yourself, and then the real ability and the possibility of engaging deeply with someone without fear or without attachment or craving or complete self-negation. Yeah. So they are very related, but one without the other is not possible. And the reason we have so much trouble in marriages or intimate relationships is because these processes are incomplete in a lot of us, and we proceed to get into relationships in spite of that, and therefore, all kinds of issues have emerged.
Thank you.
So I hope that answers the question. Yes.
Next one is, what is social identity? Is it like how one or individual or couple is seen by others in immediate family or overall society?
Both, actually, both. So I think it's the ecosystem that matters to you. It is your professional network, it's your social network, it's the group of people that that are parents of your children. I'm sorry, that are parents of your children's friends, people that you hang out with, go to parties with, do birthday parties and vacations. It is whoever knows you as a couple. So it is about how you are seen by them, More than how you're seen, it is to do with attending social commitments together. So if there's a wedding, do you show up together? If there's a funeral, do you show up together? If there is a party or something else, do you both go together? Or is it like it's your gang, you go, I'm not coming? Or the person is either unavailable most of the time due to work or travel or whatever. So where the the visibility of both of them together is very reduced. So that would uh, create a very loose or very weak kind of a social identity.
The last question for you is, what if that inner calling does not match up with the calling of your partner, your family, or society at large? How do you navigate
Hmm. So I think that precisely is the challenge. That is precisely the challenge. When I say integrity, that is what it is. To stay in integrity, you'll have to take that risk. Now, how do you navigate? We come back again to what I was saying earlier. Um, it is about really recognizing that, first of all, being fully clear and committed to it, and making those choices, trying to include the people who will be impacted or who matter to you in that process, through conversations, through communication, through convincing, through various approaches. Although however, with the understanding that you may not get the agreement or the approval or the blessings of all concerned at all times. Sometimes it so happens that you will proceed, someone will be unhappy, not someone, some many people might be unhappy. And then slowly over a period of time, when they see what you're doing, they come around, they turn around as well. That also happens. So here, the issue is not that they are not agreeing, the issue is your own need for the approval of the person. So if you can look at that, can I pursue this with or without approval, with or without agreement? Is that a risk I'm willing to take? Is my pursuit worth it? Am I restless enough to do it nevertheless? Making certain compromises. Then yes, it is something that happens the period of time. But be prepared that it is never an easy path. It is never an easy path to go on the path of your calling. It's never an easy path.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought that was the last, but seems to be there's just one more.
No problems.
Okay, so says focus on both positive and negative on oneself. Interesting point. Seeing negatives is the discovery of the mischievous self. Isn't this the teaching of Sri Krishna too in Bhagavad Gita?
Okay, so I have a slightly different take on it. The negative is the disowned parts. So that doesn't matter what part it is. The negative is the things that you don't want to be associated with. Jealousy, I don't think I have that in me. Anger is something I feel, but I don't want to be feeling. So anything that is uncomfortable and unpleasant that you shun, that you avoid, that you ignore, that you disown, reject, that becomes negative. That becomes your shadow. It will trail you behind you without you being aware of it. And anything that's positive, which you like, which you uphold, which you look up to, which you want to acquire, which you believe you have already, that is your light side, that is your positive, right? So the mischief is something else. The mischief is the disowned child, the abandoned child, the wounded child within us, which, when it finds a safe space in a certain relationship, suddenly emerges. So you will see that with a certain set of people or a certain kind of a person, you are just full of laughter and joy and wit and humor and spontaneous, mischief. That's the child. So all the negative, all the disowned parts of all the four aspects, unless they are included, unless they are embraced, unless they are made a part of you, it is hard to be mischievous. The child won't come out as long as it feels judged by you or the outsiders as good or bad. So I hope that that distinction is clear. For you to be mischievous, you need to be self accepting. Let me put it that way.
Thank you. And Sujata, I promise this is the last question. Okay, because I know I've been saying this, but it really is the
I
last.
don't know. No, that's okay. No, it's not. That's okay. It's all right. No
Okay.
problem.
All right. So, in the psychological impact of disruptive childhood experiences, you have women at the bottom and men at the top of the circle. Any particular reason for this? Are girls more adversely affected than boys on the same issues?
Oh, no, 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 no. Please don't go by the physical location of it. This refers to the elemental model. If you remember, the earth and the water were at the bottom, the fire and the air are up there. So that's why the distinction. It is not about they're more repressed or that way. That's not necessarily the case. However, unfortunately, that is also the case, just in the way our society works. No matter how much you talk about egalitarianism and equal upbringing, etc., 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 girls tend to have it harder, no matter where they are born. So yes, that is true. But the picture is not representing that. That is not what that is about.
So, with that, thank you so much again. And with that, we conclude our question and answers at this time. Oh, oops.
Okay.
There is one more. Uh, do you want to take one more, or should we?
Malini, it's all right. I thought we had the slot was from 8:30 to 10, right? Or for you, it's 10:30 to 12, right?
Oh, okay.
So I think we have another 10, 15
Sujata, we
minutes.
have time.
That's okay.
Okay, perfect.
Just
Yeah,
patience
that's
for
okay.
you, that's all.
Perfect. So my
Oh,
next
no, no,
question
no,
to you
no
is,
worries.
I take back on my last question thing. So would you say accepting each other's shadow brings more openness?
Ah, what a lovely question. Okay, so the trick here is you really can't accept anyone's shadow unless you first accept your own. Believe me. So this is the problem with superficial spirituality. Be kind, be nice, be compassionate, do this, do that. That is all operating at a very superficial level. You cannot do that to anyone unless you first do it to yourself, right? So, just as you can't love someone else unless you truly, deeply love and care for yourself, same way, unless you first know, find out, and then also be okay with your own shadows, there is no way you'll be able to accept another person's shadows. It's not possible. You may do it for a short while, you may do it for a few people, but consistently and for all the people, not possible. Yeah. It's important to find your own shadows. And there I'd like to give a tip. The simplest way to find a shadow is to first look at what you value. If you value calm and peace, then definitely anger and ruckus and chaos is your shadow. Meaning you detest it, you don't like it. And anyone who brings in that energy, you will have trouble being with. So internally, can you come to a agreement and an embrace between this split of calmness versus chaos? Can we collapse the polarity internally first? Can we make the light and shadow come together first? Then yes, then you can, of course, allow and embrace other people's shadows as well. Yeah?
Thank you. That was very nice. Can you please elaborate more on how you understand and accept the abandoned child?
Yes, yes. Um, so, as I said, this is a rather radical statement. I think just the simple process of upbringing is traumatic for a child. It doesn't matter how good the parents are or how terrible the parents have been in the parenting, let me say. This process is traumatic. It is so, right? Now, a child can feel abandoned in multiple ways. uh, Parental unavailability, neglect, disinterest, abuse, withdrawal of attention or care, punishment, comparison, all kinds of tiny, tiny, subtle little things can create woundedness and abandonment in a child. Now, what such children will then do, and this is a natural automatic response, this is not something that the child actually thinks and proceeds to do. It is a survival mechanism that has biological roots in our nervous system. There is a recent 10-year-old kind of a theory, it's called the polyvagal theory, which talks about how we are biologically wired for survival by either, you know, fighting or fleeing or freezing, right? Now these correspond to the reptilian, mammalian, and the more evolved brain process and nervous processes as well. So what the child does is when this kind of thing happens, so let me give this example. When a child feels continually neglected, like its needs are not being taken care of, one of the typical coping mechanisms is this child will develop an ability to preempt the needs of the people around it. It is like in giving what it lacks, it hopes to get it. So it becomes actually a very model child who has no needs, but who's able to take care of other people's needs in the ecosystem, in the family. Now, it's convenient and comfortable for the family because obviously there's some reason why the parents are unable to meet the needs of this child. Either they are too busy or too tired, too exhausted, addicted, ill, or God knows what, right? So now this child will grow up with this adaptation of meeting needs as a strong suit, as an overcoat that it wears to the world outside. But deep inside, there is that hungry child who wants to be taken care of, who wants to be attended to, who wants to be pampered, who wants to be protected. Now, in an intimate relationship, the coat comes off, and that hungry child comes forward, and that is how conflict begins because the person who likes you has seen the strong coat. They've not seen the inside, right? So I hope that throws light on what that wounded inner child business is and how to work with it.
Sujata, I have a follow-up questions on the shadow. How do we do that? Bring that polarity between the two shadows of yourself.
Uh, yes. So as I was saying, these are processes. These are detailed, long processes. It is not something I can just quickly give you a few tips on. But as I said, the place to begin is to notice yourself when you have a sense of approval about something and when you have a sense of disapproval about something. I said, look at your values and you will find out your shadows, right? So, for example, if I value punctuality, which is a good thing, that's fine. But if someone comes late and I develop this intense disapproval, criticality, judgment, almost contempt, why are you doing this? Then that is a shadow. The sloppiness or the not keeping to your word, that part is your shadow. So now, how do you work with it? Can you give yourself the permission to not be so punctual all the time? Can you remember to bring kindness and compassion when you meet someone who is not punctual? Can you try to include and embrace the aspect of non-punctuality in your uh, space? So that's just a very simplistic example. So similarly to everything, anything that you hold as mine, as that's who I am, that's my identity, that's my value. Right behind that lurks a shadow. So you can look at that. So, for example, uh, for me, one of the things I very deeply value is responsiveness. Okay. I believe that no matter what happens, no matter who calls, no matter what it is, I will always respond. I will not ignore or not say something to a call or a message or whatever. Now, the shadow of this is when I send a message to someone or when I have called someone and I don't hear a response, oh, it evokes all kinds of emotions and confusions in me, starting from a little disappointment all the way to how can they do this? How can they do this? Judgment, and also looking down on the person, all kind of things. So, first of all, I need to catch myself when I'm going down that track, and then also make it okay that while responsiveness is a virtue, non responsiveness is also a necessity. For some people, it may be part of tact. For some people, it may be a part of just not having the time to do it, or misunderstanding the message in a different way, or thinking that, yeah, anyway, they will talk tomorrow and clarify, or whatever it is. They may have justified it in their own way. So, can we make place for that? Can we not judge that as not okay? That would be my shadow. That would be my shadow work. Yeah. So I hope that example clarifies it.
One last question. I mean, I won't say last this time, making sure. Uh, one question is towards the spirituality. When you say self, do you mean Atma or Paramatma?
See, I forgot to put my disclaimer this time. I always begin my sessions by saying the self is what you understand it to be. Let's not get into Atma, Paramatma, Dvaita, Advaita. There's no end to that. At the level we are all functioning right now, the self is what you think you are, your sense of identity. And the identity usually has to do with this mind, which, like I said, which approves of certain things and disapproves of certain things. So we are in that dual state right now. We can talk of higher self, which is to do with parts of us that tend to be more expansive, more inclusive, more compassionate, more gentle, more open. That can be the higher self. Now, beyond that, Atma and Paramatma, I am not qualified to speak about. So I hope that settles it.
Thank you. Thank you again. So somebody asked, do you counsel people in US?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So it happened in a very organic way. I think 7, 8, 10 years ago onwards. People that I worked with here, when they relocate, go to different parts of the world, they want to continue to work. So this Skype and Zoom and video calls are the way I work with these clients. Yes, I do.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And that will be all our questions. And Sujata, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation with wealth of information, actually. We really, really appreciate your time and willingness to readily accept when we requested you to see if you can do this presentation for us. And at the same time, I also want to thank our team, Raju, Garu, Madhvanji, Ramesh, Lekha, and last but not the least, our mentor, go-to person, Dr. Venkatram. And thanks everybody for attending this webinar. This is the first of many from HFSS, we can promise. Also, as you all know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And it doesn't mean that we have to go through domestic violence, but if there is anybody out there who's going through or anything, please let them know. We are here to help, guide them, and see, because they do not have to struggle, suffer. So this AFS's goal is mainly to help and see how we can, at the best of our ability, to help and eventually, hopefully, prevent domestic violence, and not just help, but just prevent. Again, we are always there. Please, any donations would always help us to help our survivors. We'd greatly appreciate that. And thanks again. Thank you very much. And I also want to read a couple of things. We had somebody, I think, yeah, Yashwant Ji said, congratulations to HFSS for such a wonderful program. Kudos to you all and warm regards to Ameya Ji. Thank you, Yashwant Ji, and also somebody else was here giving us kudos. Mohandas Ji, excellent session. Thank you very much. Very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful webinar. So there's kudos everywhere, Sujata, and thank you so much once again. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Malini. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Venkatji. Really enjoyed being here, and let's remain in touch. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Absolutely. I think we are all a little bit. Yeah, I think we're all a little bit better off after hearing this for sure. And we'd love to have you back next whenever we can do this again, because I'm sure people would want to hear more of what you say. Thank you.
And just one last, before I forget, I want to thank Kranti for introducing us to Sujata. Thank you, Kranti.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye guys. Have a good time.